Hello, everyone, and welcome to the very first episode of Tales from the Wandering Scribe here for the month of June. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia. Maybe you know me as the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill. And joining us today is an author making their official debut here on the show and the first spotlight episode for the month of June. Now, my guest today is a writer and artist from the Netherlands, mainly focused on writing light novels and also does editing and translating themselves. He also writes lyrics for the songs for his books, and his Kickstarter for his light novel, Twins of the Vain Moon, is now live on Kickstarter with 10 days to go. I am so excited to have this guest on the show, ladies and gentlemen. So, without further ado, let's give a huge round of applause to our guest today, Jamie, otherwise known as June Camilla. Jamie, welcome to the show.
Nice to finally be here. Thank you so much.
Awesome, awesome. I am so excited to have you here on the show for our first spotlight. Now, before we begin, June, can you give us a little teaser into your background of, writing and editing, translating, and also writing music? I think that's the first time I've ever had a guest on the show that has actively made music for their works, for their stories.
All right. Um, I've now been writing for about almost 10 years right now, and I think professionally writing, actually bringing out books, now about 2 years. I brought out my last book, my first light novel, on Amazon last year. It was like a
Nice.
romance light novel, and this year we're working on isekai.
Ooh,
Besides that, I started writing for music somewhere last year, and I brought out music this year as well. So it's on Spotify, iTunes, those kind of places.
nice, nice, June. I like that. I like that. Now, also as a little icebreaker, is there a random fact about you that not a lot of people know about?
Random facts. I know about 10 languages.
Ooh, that is pretty cool. What are the 10 languages?
English, Dutch, German, decent amount of French. I can understand Spanish and Italian, and then I know Chinese and Japanese.
Ooh, nice. Very, very nice. There are a lot of people that would love that. Awesome, June. Awesome. So, I guess let's start at the very, very beginning. So, what sort of instilled this creative bug in you? Did you always want to be a writer first and then transition into music? Or were you a musician first and then went into the world of writing?
That's a complicated one. I used to, back when I was 18, 19, I started on a website. It was for, no, a website, an app. I think it was called Amino. And on there were anime groups. And a person wrote a story, a fanfic of something. And I had so many issues with it where I was like, okay, I will write the fanfic again for you and I'll show you how it should be written properly. And people ended up liking it. And I started writing it every single day, make my own story. And people kind of liked it to that point where I wrote for like 6 months and I had like thousands of readers every single day. And then it got to a point where it got popular enough that I really wanted to do more with writing. And I actually got into learning more about how to write a book, how to edit, how to do stuff like that.
Awesome. All right. All right. And for people not familiar with the term, what are light novels?
So light novels are pretty much the same as regular novels, although they're in a smaller size. So in Japan, they're usually brought on the train or in the car, just something small to read and that they can put away easily.
Awesome. Okay. And without revealing too much, June, what can you tell us of your upcoming book that's now on Kickstarter?
So the current book, Twins of the Vain Moon, is a dark fantasy isekai light novel about two people in modern Japan who end up losing their lives and actually being reincarnated into a fantasy world. And in this world where, unlike regular isekais where they are reborn and maybe they're super powerful or super smart, these two people really have to learn how to live in this world. They're not accepted right away, and they have a lot of struggles to get through to even get to the point of being accepted in this world.
I like that. I like that. And I had a chance to look at your website a little bit more, June, and get a sense of, your YouTube channel, the music, and the stories themselves. I really, really enjoy. First, the covers are very catchy. They definitely draw the reader in. And I don't know why, but it brought back a memory of, these types of stories that I remember seeing back in high school. I actually was part of an anime club back in my local high school, and just seeing these just brought in a lot of very fond, really good memories. So I'm very keen to learn a little bit more about each of these stories and sort of like what went into them. So among your written work, what is the first one that really got you started on this writer's path?
So among the stuff I wrote or that I read?
So the stuff that you have written.
Initially back on Amino, I wrote a fan fiction slash romance high school story. And it's also kind of like what my first book is about, like a romance high school novel, but set in Japan. So really based on Japanese culture and Japanese people themselves and like Japanese history, etc., while still having that fantasy aspect. So I really went from romance into more romance drama into more action and fantasy isekai stuff.
Nice, nice. Now, this actually was a fan question one of my viewers wanted to ask you, and I think it's really, really good. And I don't think I've ever gotten this question before on the show.
All
And
right.
they would like to know, how has writing fan fiction changed your writing as you've progressed in your career?
Hmm. I think fan fiction is one of those ways where you get to explore a story in another way where the usual story, you're able to change it up in the way your mind is working. So, for example, if you have like Cyberpunk, for example, in the original story, Rebecca dies. However, in your fan fiction, you could write a story about what would happen if Rebecca would survive and what would that kind of thing change in the story.
Mm, nice, very,
And
very nice.
having the knowledge to be able to change those moments or how to properly write those moments in a way that's also believable for the readers helps you with writing your own stories as well.
Absolutely, because if you do think about it, a lot of fan fictions are in a sense, what ifs, like really plot out and really well researched. I mean, there are some fan fictions that are still within the reality of the fandom that they're a part of, to where it makes sense that this could have been, a likely outcome in the main canon storyline. But then you have those that are completely out there in left field just to like explore, fun what ifs. But it's that idea, that sense of creativity and world building that definitely, is very helpful when we create our own works. Because to your point, if we're able to fill in the gaps of an existing fandom but show our own take, then we can in sense take that knowledge of world building, outlining, and all that stuff and make it into our own works. So with that mentality going forward, June, what was ultimately the promise you're making to your readers as well as yourself as the author?
To tell stories that do, in a sense, feel real. I think a big issue, especially nowadays with a lot of anime, manga, light novels, is where the characters are either too strong or too perfect or they're not really believable. They're fun to watch and fun to look at or fun to read about, but they don't necessarily make you relate in a realistic way. And that's kind of what I do try to do with my stories.
Nice. All right. So you almost want to like humanize the characters and make them, ground them in reality, so to speak.
Yeah, I definitely prefer writing realistic characters and realistic issues, like real issues over just fantasy.
All right. I feel it. I feel it. My next fan question, and this one's a very popular that a lot of my listeners love to ask. One of my viewers, or actually several of my viewers, correction, would like to know, between the characters throughout all of your light novels, who was your favorite to really flesh out and explore? And who was the one that caused you nothing but torment, either in storytelling, arc development, or just bringing the character to life?
Oh, wow, that's a good question. I think it really changes at times, depending on what book I'm writing. So if you would have asked me this question with my first book, like last year, I would have probably said that book because I was so busy with it and so busy with those characters.
Mm.
However, at the moment, I would say Renji, the main character of Twins of the Vain Moon, the main male character, is probably the hardest to write and the most time went into actually developing him as a character.
Okay. And I think you may have answered this previously, but I wanted to go a little bit more in depth. When writing characters, how do you give them a sense of autonomy and their voice in the sense that they're not caricatures of tropes in storytelling, but actual people that we, the readers, could imagine interacting with in the real world?
So one thing I do a lot, especially with researching characters or stories and cultures, I went to Japan last year, for example, and I went on vacation for a whole month. And I used that time to really get to know as many Japanese people as possible, interact with as many people as I can, ask so many questions, learn more about how they live their lives, how they feel about things, how they interact with things or people, and really adapt that into my characters as well, because they're also originally from Japan.
Hmm. All right. All right. I like it. I like it. Now, which of your works was the first one published, and what did that really teach you about, publishing your own work?
The first one was You're My Lucky Star, and it's on Amazon. It's a romance high school light novel. I learned a lot from that regarding editing and how much time it actually takes to properly make something, especially because Amazon also has their specific rules of how to
Hmm.
publish and what kind of files. So I made some mistakes with like the cover and the spacing and how big it should be and stuff like that. So I learned a lot from that as well. And based on what I've learned from the last book is to really properly try to make the product complete and have it also be on other places besides Amazon at start as well, to have a bit more advertising space as well.
All right. I like it. I like it. Now, here's another fan question one of my viewers wanted to know. And this actually is a really good question. When researching for your books, was there a particular anime or several animes that had used in terms of research? Was there any anime that you have watched for research purposes that mirrored either the genre or the type of story you were wanting to show?
So not necessarily I watched it because I wanted to research it. It's more so I watched it and it was one of the inspirations. And for
Ah, okay.
Twins of the Vain Moon, I would say Mushoku Tensei, Fate Stay Night, those two have definitely been very big inspirations.
Ooh, I don't think I've heard about those. I honestly have stopped watching anime for a long time. I dabble here and there, but I haven't watched like a full blown anime in a very, very long time. I remember watching a lot of them in high school, but that was like, the originals, like as they say, like the big three, like Dragon Ball, Naruto, and Naruto Shippuden. Not so much in Bleach, but I did have a good amount of friends who did. But even watching those shows, they were also very useful in terms of like inspiration for characters, world building, or their own magic system or power system or what have you, and everything like that in between. So ultimately, from what you're talking about your light novels, June, would you say that they're almost kind of like slice of life stories, as we see like in anime?
In a sense, they have a bit of slice of life. I think with Isekai, it's a bit less. It's more so that the first book really focuses on introducing the characters a lot and the world. So there's a lot of information. Like my book's also quite big. I think my first book was around 741 pages. So that's including drawings and the story. And this second one is sitting at around 800 something.
Oh my goodness, June. Okay,
And
you've actually taken the role of like the biggest book I've ever heard of.
And light novels are usually also in parts. So you have small light novel series around 12 books. You have some bigger series like isekais, for example. They usually go up to 26 books.
Oh my goodness. I don't even know like how long it took you to write that. We know after with editing, formatting, the pictures, because the biggest book I have written was around like maybe 500 pages, and that's like the max. But yours is 700, and then now going into another one which is 800.
I
That's
actually
absolutely insane.
I actually had to cut a lot. So originally, the first draft, like the first completely finished draft, was around 1,000 something pages, and
Oh
I
my
already went to like a
goodness.
smaller letter type and smaller spacing, and even then it was still way too big. So I had to cut a bit.
Oh my goodness. So that kind of brings up the next question, June, is how do you balance your time with writing as well as your other project, which now of course leads into your music? So how do you balance the two to not feel too overwhelmed and burned out?
I think mostly because I really enjoy what I do, it's hard to get burned out over it. And it definitely helps as well that I do so many different things. So it keeps a lot of variation. So I write, I edit, I translate Chinese and Japanese, and I work on lyrics for the songs, of course. And besides that, I also still draw personally as well. So
Nice.
doing
All
all
right.
of those things at separate times does make sure I don't get burned out. And besides that, I do give up a lot of sleep to get my writing to be done.
I would imagine. I would definitely imagine. So that kind of leads into my next question, which I think you just answered right now. Are you a night owl when it comes to writing, or are you like an early riser?
A night owl and an early riser. Like I usually, if I write, I sleep around 2, 3 o'clock at night or later, and then maybe 3, 4 hours after I'm up again, and I'll start again.
Oh my goodness. You definitely have a routine that works for you. I don't know if I could do that. I think the latest I've ever slept is like, or latest I stayed up was like maybe like 1 in the morning, but that doesn't work for me like anymore. Like I can't do that. It affects my writing. But that's the thing about us creatives. We have our own schedule and routine that works best for us. So now it's shifting gears from your writing a little bit. Let's talk a little bit more about your music. I'm very
Yes.
curious of how that came about. What really got you invested into first creating music and then taking that passion for music and making songs based upon your books?
So that's actually quite simple. So light novels and manga usually gets made into anime, and animes, a lot of them have really good music, really good opening songs, ending songs, and I really always admire that. So with my first book, when I was close to having it done, a couple months before that, I got in contact with a producer and singers and stuff like that. And I was like, I really want to make an opening song for or ending song for my books as well. And we started with that. We did an ending song, and I wrote lyrics for it. And then when it came out, people seemed to like it, and I was like, okay, this feels good. This sounds good. I'm happy with it. People are happy with it, and I want to do more with it. So we did the first song. We actually had a music video made as well in Indonesia. We filmed it there, and that came out. And a couple months after, I was like, okay, I want to keep doing this for my next book as well. So I started writing more lyrics, got in contact with singers again. Currently, we're also planning for the Kickstarter to work with VTubers together to also do songs for the book as well.
Nice, very nice. Now, is there a particular song that you enjoy that really like touches your soul, not just solely as like the author, but just as a reader as well?
Are you saying my songs or songs in general?
So the songs you have written, and
Mm.
now just hearing them sung by like the singers.
I think the first song still has a special place in my heart, even though it has been a year already, and it might not be the best song from the songs that are out right now. It's still a song that like speaks to me, especially
That's
based on the
amazing.
fact that most of the songs are based on the books and also tell a story besides the books themselves. So you kind of like get like an extra story to it.
Ooh, all right. I like it. I like it. So, with all that said, with the music you've written for your books as well as writing your light novels, I'm very curious. What has been like the overall reaction like been from like friends and family? When did you tell them about these new ventures of yours, and when did you feel confident in yourself to say, you know what, I am this and I am this? And the reason I bring this up, June, is a lot of guests I've had on the show have really done reflections on themselves because it's one thing to actually create something, it's another thing to, take ownership of it and actually say, you know what, yeah, I am an author, or yeah, I do create, music or songs for books, for my own works. It's a very personal decision to actually take ownership of what we've achieved.
Yeah, that's actually quite interesting. So back when I first started, I think the initial reactions were like, "Oh, you want to write something? Oh, cute or cool? Yeah, just yeah, sure, do it. Have fun, I guess." So people weren't necessarily immediately interested or anything. So it actually took a while for people to warm up to the idea. And then when I actually got the book out, I was like, "Okay, hey, it's out." And then when people got it and they got the chance to read it, they actually grew to actually like it, and they were like a bit more supportive. Also,
Ah,
in general, I'm kind of a person like I'll do something, and then once it's out, then I'll finally let you know, like, hey, I made something. So with the music as well, like
okay.
when I made songs after my second song, I didn't tell people for a long time until everything was done and I was ready to release stuff. And they were like, wait, why didn't you tell us? We wanted to know.
Absolutely. And it is that decision where it's like you want to actually be, 100% sure that the finished product is ready to share. And sometimes it's that bit of anticipation or sudden realization that really gets the ball going and really, builds one's audience and following and stuff like that. Now, this next set of questions, I'm very keen to hear your thoughts on because it's the one set of questions that I really like. And it is, what does it mean to be an indie creative in the digital age, because the industry has greatly changed and like over the last few years with the rise of artificial intelligence creating generative content that is being pushed into the market, kind of sidelining human created stories and human voices as well when we talk about narration as well as songs as well. It can be a lot, and that can make us dig deep into our imposter syndrome, writer's block, our creativity. It can just be a lot. Not to mention, for social media, we leave ourselves exposed to the darker sides of social media and what does it
Mhm.
mean to be a creative. So I'm very curious, June, for you and what you have achieved in your career thus far, what has still disciplined you, and you can even say motivated you to still keep going and telling the stories you want to tell and creating the songs you are passionate about.
So I think the best way I can look at it with this question is if you look at my Kickstarter, for example, because you said you checked it out. So far, I've been working with cosplayers to do the promotion. I've been working with VTubers to actually work on the music and maybe some extra stuff. I've been working with different artists to actually do the art for the books and the covers. So, in as many ways as possible, even though we could go the easy route and go with AI and stuff like that, I still choose to actually work with people as much as possible as I can for my project. Even though I'm not really like a big writer yet or anything, I do think that's very important to do. And especially nowadays, you have two groups of people. You have people that really don't care or they're not involved in being an artist or creator or whatever. And they're like, hey, we're fine as long as we can read stuff or listen to stuff. And you
Mhm.
have the group that's like really against it. They're like, okay, you cannot do any single thing with it. So having to find that balance between what people find acceptable and you personally find acceptable is also really important. And for me, working with people is what's really important to me.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And you're right. It does have to be like this balancing act that is beneficial for both parties. Now, this kind of goes into a fan question slash regular question that a lot of my viewers like to ask my guests. And I'll give some context for this question. So,
Right.
I've been doing this show for about now 8 years, and I've had a lot of guests on the show from, authors, indie authors, comic writers, narrators, editors, theater actors, actors with SAG, and so forth. And I've learned a lot from them.
Hmm.
And a majority of them all began their careers during the lockdown years, the COVID years. A lot of people use the term COVID unicorns. That's when they found like their passions or rediscovered their passions. And for authors, the industry was flooded with new content, and that was awesome. But as time has gone by, it's been saturated, overly saturated, some would argue. And people believe with the rise again, with generative AI being as powerful as it is now and creating generative books, generated content, which is mass produced, which kind of mass creativity and imagination,
Hmm.
it begs people to wonder, are we in a golden age of creativity, or unless things change, we could slip into a digital dark age in the sense of creativity is not being created by people, is being created by machines. And the human voices, the human driven stories will be not as significant anymore. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on this.
So there are two things to this. I do believe personally that most people, if they're talented enough, they won't have to worry too much about generative AI or AI in general. I think people will support actual talent over AI any day. Also, this also kind of sticks with it is that if people truly care so much about AI becoming a big problem in this space, then do your best to support the people that are actually using people or working with people instead of just going the easy route.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Absolutely, very true.
it's easy to worry about AI, but then also being like, but I don't want to support creators either. Like you have to
Mm.
support them if you want to make sure they actually keep existing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You're 100% correct. Whether that's artists, whether that's narrators, editors, or so forth, if you are saying that support, human driven content, you do have to show your support. That means working with them, hiring them for their services. So you have to show your full support in that, which is, absolutely true. And then it goes back to what you said, June, about, a balancing act between there are those that do use AI responsibly, and that is 100% okay. And then you have those that are completely against the use of AI, but understand why some people need it. So, as you said, it is a balancing act. And I think that's what it needs to be. It needs to be a balancing act between the two to where two can coexist. But I think the emphasis does need to be put on, human voices and human driven content first before computer generated content. Because, like everything, it will fade away and it won't be as impressive anymore.
Indeed, indeed. It does take a lot of work and effort to actually make a product that is actually good and that people could believe in. And it takes a lot of work. Like art takes work, writing takes work, good editing takes a lot of work, translating takes a lot of work. And those are things that are important to learn and properly do instead of just going the easy route and doing it quick.
Very true. Very, very true. So we have a few last questions that I want to ask you, June. And this one's probably my personal favorite. For you as a creative, how do you balance these two important aspects, which is an author's individuality and creativity, but understanding the market that you're writing in? And the reason I bring this up is no matter what you work on, whether it's music, whether it's novels, manga, art, or what have you, the fans or the consumers in that genre or fandom have certain expectations. And I know some people argue that you should write for market or you shouldn't write for market. It is a personal choice. But regardless, it is a balancing act of the two. You want to create something that is yours, that is original in that sense. But you also want to make something that is familiar to those who have been in the audience, been in the genre for many years. So for you, June, with your songs and for your light novels, how have you balanced the two to showcase both?
So, of course, you're right in the fact that people do write according to their niche or according to what they want to write and for what specific group. Like, for example, I write light novels, so they're mostly based on people that will like anime, manga, or light novels, or visual novels, or just fantasy stories in that sense. But there's also the fact of what you write should also be something that you'll be willing to read as well. Like, if you wouldn't even want to read your own story, why would you write that kind of story? It's like how in the last couple of years there have been so many writers that have started writing smut stories just to earn money, but they wouldn't even read their own stuff.
Right. That is 100% very, very true, June. Very, very true. So it does boil down to, this thing of, would you read this if you were the target audience, if you were buying it? And that is very, very true. Like, if you're not going to read it, why would you dedicate time to write it? Because it is time. It is time that you are giving away, or not giving away, putting into to create something, but you're not going to read it. And I guess some people have their own thoughts and opinions on this. Some people have been very successful in the genre that they write in, even though they may not be fans of the genre, they still enjoy it. And again, what it is to be creative, as we talked about, is very personal, but it's understanding
Mm.
your genre, your niche, and your audience. And as we wrap up this incredible discussion, June, there is one final question I want to ask you. With everything we've talked about and more about your songwriting career, your career as an author, and what you've learned about the industry thus far, what do you want people to take away from your works, from your songs and your light novels?
Ooh, that's a good question. Oh wow. Hmm. If at least after reading my stories, they can have a feeling that life can be so much more than they already think it is at the moment. If they're going through a hard time or good time, whatever, if the characters can give them a little bit of courage or like happiness during their days or whatever, that's already way more than enough for me.
Beautifully said, June. Beautifully said. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we conclude the first episode for the June lineup here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. Want to give a huge thank you to Jamie, otherwise known as June, for coming on the show, making their official debut. June, thank you so much for being on the
Thanks so
channel.
much.
Absolutely appreciate it. And where can people find you on social media if they want to reach out and connect? And where can people support you for your Kickstarter?
Let's start with the Kickstarter first. A little bit of information. We're currently with 10 or 9 days left at the moment. We're at 7,400 euros out of the 10,000. So that means we're very close. So we just need a small little push. Besides that, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, I have my own website, and I'm on YouTube, of course. So those places would be the easiest way to find me.
Excellent. I will put those down below in the description of this video, and I will also put the Kickstarter in the first comment of this video. Go support the Kickstarter. You will not be disappointed. And if you'd like to see June back on the show for a full-length author interview to talk more in depth of any of his previously published works or his upcoming work, which is live on Kickstarter, you know what you'll have to do. Like this video, comment down below, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for another amazing episode here on the show. A huge thank you to June for coming on the show, making their official debut. And as always, this is the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill signing out. Wish you all a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. And we'll see you all next time. Take care. Have a wonderful day.
Take care.